me, going back to kind of the Spurs not having a true power forward on the roster, from Toronto, Jonathan Givenoy has the Spurs taking LSU forward Tari Eason. And I know we've talked about him a lot. We've talked about even potentially picking him at 9. But it seems like that just with the way that this draft is, it's honestly a pretty talented draft. This could be one where Tari Eason falls. And if the Spurs were able to get him at 8, or not at 8, excuse me, at 20, after getting Duren at 9, I think that that would be huge. Just for the draft, because I mean, those are two real positions that honestly the Spurs need. Like you mentioned, a backup center, right? Which is
Hmm.
probably what Duren would be this year, or he'd be in the G League, and then next year would be a backup center, with Jakob Pertl leaving, and then obviously a 4, like you mentioned. And I think getting somebody like Tari Eason, who's got a 7'2" wingspan, Kawhi-like hands, has a potential jump shot that's, maybe a little bit shaky, a lot better than Durant's. But once again, you give him Chip England, that's, something that could be a skill for him, and just his physicality. And then this is something I've mentioned before, but it's just so Spursy. He was the best player on the Tigers by far. Like, everybody knew that Tari Eason was the best player for LSU last year. As an LSU fan, everybody knew it. But he was a 6-man. Why? Because it gave the Tigers the best chance to win. And that is something that is just super Spursy, right?
Hmm.
So to add a long-armed, versatile forward like Eason could make a lot of sense if he's still on the board, which is a question, but I think that there is a chance that maybe that happens. Only 36% from 3, but still 80% free throw shooter. And I watched him. He kind of has a weird release. So once again, like, I feel like if you get him in the gym with Chip, like, he's gonna be a decent, like, 3-point shooter at the least. Because 36% isn't that terrible, as a starting point, especially when you look at him being an 80% free throw shooter, which usually shows that if you have
Yeah.
an 80 plus free throw percentage, you've got some touch. He also had 47 dunks throughout the year. And he rarely had plays called for him because he played on so LSU was ranked second to last in assists. So he had to do a lot of this off the dribble, right? In the half
Mm.
court. Um,
Yeah.
so that if you get him in a Spurs system where there's a lot more ball movement, there's also the appeal of maybe a part of his game not being unlocked as well. I know we like Tari Eason. It's pretty obvious, especially me being a big LSU fan. But Ethan, what are your thoughts on Tari Eason, especially getting him at 20?
If we can get him at 20, I say pull the trigger immediately, because he does address that need of a versatile 4 that can defend basically, I don't know about 1, but 2 through 4. He can switch. How is he in the pick and roll?
I would say decent, like, especially defensively. Not
Okay.
really on offense. Maybe a pick and pop guy, rarely, but
Okay.
kind of like I said, in this year's LSU team, he was
Yeah.
kind of like the team. Maybe not.
Yeah.
He had a couple other pieces, but he had to do a lot of the work off the dribble. So defensively, as a pick and roll switch guy, he's solid. That's the other thing. Defensively, he is a solid physical defender. Sometimes has some mental lapses, but like that's the only. It's not because he's like not paying attention. It's just because, like,
Yeah.
also it was Will Wade's last year at LSU. He just didn't really know the scheme. Like, if he knows the scheme, knows where to go, he's going to be a solid defender.
I'm with that pick. I like Tari Eason.